Recently, two major disasters struck: a deadly earthquake in Taiwan and a bridge collapse in Baltimore. The Taiwan quake, a magnitude of 7.4, left at least 16 dead and triggered landslides. In Baltimore, a cargo ship collision caused the Francis Scott Key Bridge to collapse, disrupting trade and raising infrastructure concerns. Welcome back to Group Broadcast, a branch of Abiao Group Incorporated. Taiwan's earthquake, centered in Hualien County, toppled buildings and triggered landslides. Rescue workers search for survivors as families huddle in makeshift shelters. The disaster underscores the need for resilient infrastructure and international aid. The Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse in Baltimore exposed the vulnerabilities of aging infrastructure. A cargo ship collision caused a catastrophic failure, disrupting East Coast trade. The incident reignited debates about infrastructure maintenance and safety. Hualien County, known for its natural beauty, was devastated by the earthquake. Buildings crumbled, landslides buried homes, and rescue efforts continue amid aftershocks. The scene is one of chaos and destruction, with a grim human toll. Amidst the rubble, stories of survival and loss emerged, highlighting the human toll. Families await news of loved ones and rescue workers toil tirelessly. These stories underscore the resilience of the human spirit and the dedication of rescuers. The earthquake disrupted Taiwan's semiconductor industry, a critical global supply chain. Major fabs shut down, sparking fears of further delays and price hikes in tech products. The incident highlights the interconnectedness and vulnerability of the global economy. The Taiwanese government and international aid organizations mobilized swiftly. Questions arose about building codes and disaster preparedness. The earthquake sparked a national conversation about infrastructure investment and disaster response. Taiwan's dominance in semiconductor production was shaken by the earthquake. TSMC's temporary shutdown sent ripples through the global tech industry. The incident exposed the fragility of concentrated production models. The earthquake disrupted the just-in-time manufacturing model, exposing its fragility. Industries like automotive and consumer electronics faced delays and shortages. The event highlighted the need for greater resilience and diversification in supply chains. The earthquake's impact extended beyond tech, affecting various industries. Aerospace, healthcare, and consumer electronics faced potential delays and price hikes. The incident underscored the interconnectedness of the global economy and the far-reaching consequences of localized disruptions. A wake-up call for tech diversification or disaster. The Taiwan earthquake served as a stark wake-up call for the tech industry, exposing the risks inherent in relying too heavily on a single region for the production of such critical components. The incident ignited a debate about the need for greater diversification in the semiconductor supply chain, urging companies and governments to explore alternative manufacturing hubs and reduce their dependence on Taiwan. Some experts argue that the current concentration of chip-making capacity in Taiwan poses a systemic risk to the global economy. They point to the island's geopolitical vulnerability, its location in a seismically active region, and the potential for disruptions due to political tensions or natural disasters. Diversifying production, they argue, would create a more resilient supply chain, less susceptible to localized disruptions. Others caution against a hasty shift away from Taiwan, arguing that the island's dominance in chip-making is the result of decades of investment, expertise, and a highly skilled workforce. Replicating this ecosystem elsewhere, they argue, would be a costly and time-consuming endeavor, potentially leading to higher chip prices and slower innovation. The debate over diversification is likely to continue, with no easy answers or quick fixes. The Taiwan earthquake, however, has undoubtedly heightened awareness of the risks inherent in the current model and spurred efforts to explore alternative manufacturing locations and build greater resilience into the global semiconductor supply chain. The stakes are high, with the smooth functioning of the global economy and the pace of technological innovation hanging in the balance. A city divided. Baltimore's bridge to nowhere. The Francis Scott Key Bridge, a steel sentinel connecting Baltimore's industrial heartland to the communities beyond, had long been a symbol of the city's resilience and its vital role in the nation's commerce. But on that fateful day, as the bridge crumpled into the Patapsco River, it became a stark symbol of vulnerability, a broken link in the city's circulatory system, and a stark reminder of the fragility of the infrastructure that underpins modern life. The bridge's collapse cleaved Baltimore in two, both literally and figuratively. What was once a routine commute across the span transformed into a logistical nightmare, forcing commuters to navigate lengthy detours, adding hours to their journeys, and injecting a dose of chaos into the daily rhythms of city life. Truck drivers, their rigs laden with goods destined for points north and south, found themselves stranded, their carefully calibrated schedules thrown into disarray. Beyond the immediate inconvenience, the bridge's absence cut a deep psychological gash through the city. The Francis Scott Key Bridge, named for the lawyer and amateur poet who penned the words to the Star-Spangled Banner during the War of 1812, held a special place in the city's collective memory. Its collapse felt, to many, like a violation, a stark symbol of decline in a city already grappling with economic challenges and social unrest. The bridge's absence served as a constant looming reminder of the disaster, its twisted wreckage visible from miles around. It became a grim tourist attraction, drawing onlookers who gazed upon the wreckage with a mixture of curiosity and unease. The collapse had exposed a vulnerability, not just in steel and concrete, but in the city's psyche, a sense of unease that lingered long after the initial shock had subsided. The dolly's deadly course, unraveling the collision. As Baltimore grappled with the aftermath of the bridge collapse, investigators descended upon the scene, determined to piece together the chain of events that led to the disaster. Their focus quickly narrowed on the Dolly, the Singapore-flagged cargo ship that had struck the bridge with such catastrophic force. The ship, its hull emblazoned with the name of a surrealist painter but its cargo decidedly mundane, became the focal point of the investigation. Its movements retraced, its crew questioned, its mechanical systems scrutinized. The Dolly's voyage had begun weeks earlier in a bustling port on the other side of the world, its holds laden with goods destined for American consumers. The ship, a workhorse of the globalized economy, had sailed thousands of miles, navigating treacherous seas and crowded shipping lanes, its arrival in Baltimore seemingly routine, just another stop on a well-traveled route. But somewhere along the way, something went terribly wrong. Preliminary reports suggested that the Dolly had experienced a loss of power as it approached the bridge, rendering it unable to maneuver effectively in the swift currents of the Patapsco River. The crew, it seemed, had fought desperately to regain control of the vessel, their efforts documented in frantic radio calls and the ship's log, but their efforts proved futile. The investigation, however, went beyond the immediate circumstances of the collision, delving into the ship's maintenance records, the crew's training and experience, and the regulatory framework governing maritime safety. Was the collision simply a tragic accident, a confluence of unfortunate circumstances, or did it point to systemic failures, lax oversight, or a culture of complacency in the shipping industry? The answers, it was hoped, would provide crucial lessons, not just for Baltimore but for ports and shipping lanes around the world. The Port of Baltimore, a bustling hub of international trade, had long been one of the city's economic engines, generating jobs, attracting investment, and connecting Baltimore to the global marketplace. But the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge threatened to throw this well-oiled machine into disarray, severing a critical artery of commerce and casting a shadow of uncertainty over the port's future. The bridge's absence created an immediate and acute logistical bottleneck, disrupting the flow of goods in and out of the port. Cargo ships, their arrival times carefully synchronized with the port's operations, found themselves stranded at sea, unable to offload their goods or take on new cargo. Trucks, their trailers laden with imported goods or exports destined for overseas markets, faced lengthy detours and costly delays. The economic repercussions of the bridge collapse rippled outward, impacting businesses both large and small. Manufacturers reliant on the port to receive raw materials and ship finished products faced production slowdowns and lost revenue. Retailers, their shelves stocked with goods from around the world, worried about potential shortages and price hikes. The Port of Baltimore, once a symbol of efficiency and interconnectedness, became a cautionary tale, highlighting the vulnerability of even the most sophisticated logistics networks to unexpected disruptions. The bridge's collapse served as a stark reminder that the smooth functioning of the global economy hinges on a delicate web of infrastructure, and that even a single broken link can have far-reaching consequences. The collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge sent shockwaves far beyond Baltimore, triggering a national conversation about the state of America's aging infrastructure and the urgent need for investment and renewal. The bridge, it turned out, was not an isolated case but rather a stark symbol of a much larger problem, a crumbling foundation underlying the nation's roads, bridges, ports, and transit systems. Engineers and infrastructure experts had long sounded the alarm about the deteriorating condition of America's infrastructure, warning of a looming crisis if investments in maintenance, repair, and modernization failed to keep pace with the demands of a growing population and a changing climate. The American Society of Civil Engineers, in its most recent report card on the nation's infrastructure, gave the United States a dismal C- grade, citing a $2.59 trillion investment gap over the next decade. The Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse, with its dramatic images of twisted steel and shattered concrete, brought the issue into sharp focus, forcing policymakers and the public alike to confront the consequences of neglect and deferred maintenance. The bridge, it turned out, had been flagged for structural deficiencies in previous inspections, but funding for repairs had been insufficient or diverted to other priorities. The disaster in Baltimore served as a wake-up call, a stark reminder that infrastructure is not merely concrete and steel, but the very foundation upon which a nation's prosperity, security, and quality of life rest. It ignited a debate about the need to prioritize infrastructure investment, to address the maintenance backlog, and to build a more resilient and sustainable future for a nation facing the challenges of a changing climate and a rapidly evolving world. The collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge sent shockwaves reverberating through the intricate web of global supply chains, exposing the fragility of the just-in-time delivery systems that have come to define modern commerce. The Port of Baltimore, a vital hub for the movement of goods along the East Coast, found itself at the epicenter of a logistical earthquake, its carefully calibrated operations thrown into disarray. With the bridge out of commission, cargo ships laden with everything from raw materials to finished goods faced a stark choice: wait indefinitely for the bridge to be repaired or reroute to other ports, adding precious time and exorbitant costs to their journeys. Shipping lines, accustomed to operating on razor-thin margins, grappled with the sudden surge in fuel costs, port fees, and logistical headaches. The ripple effects of the bridge collapse spread far beyond Baltimore, disrupting supply chains and impacting businesses across the country. Manufacturers reliant on the port to receive raw materials or ship finished products faced production slowdowns, forcing them to tap into dwindling inventories, delay orders, or in some cases halt operations altogether. Retailers, their shelves stocked with goods from around the world, braced for potential shortages and price hikes, warning consumers of potential disruptions to the availability of everything from cars and electronics to clothing and food. The bridge collapse exposed the interconnectedness of the global economy, demonstrating how a single point of failure in a complex network can have cascading consequences far beyond its immediate location. It served as a stark reminder that the smooth functioning of modern commerce depends on a delicate balance of infrastructure, logistics, and trust, a balance easily disrupted by unforeseen events. Beyond detours, the human cost of infrastructure failure. While the economic impact of the bridge collapse dominated headlines, the human cost of the disaster unfolded more quietly, in the daily struggles of individuals and families whose lives had been upended by the loss of a vital transportation artery. The bridge, for many, had been more than just a concrete and steel structure. It had been a lifeline, connecting them to jobs, schools, families, and communities. Commuters who once relied on the bridge to navigate the city found themselves facing hours-long detours, their daily routines transformed into logistical nightmares. Parents juggled work schedules with the added burden of transporting children to schools now located on the wrong side of the river. Elderly residents dependent on public transportation struggled to access essential services, their mobility curtailed by the lack of a direct route. The bridge collapse also cast a spotlight on the often overlooked issue of infrastructure equity. Those with the means to do so could absorb the added costs of longer commutes, ride-sharing services, or relocation. But for low-income residents already struggling to make ends meet, the bridge's absence represented an insurmountable obstacle, exacerbating existing inequalities and highlighting the uneven impact of infrastructure failures. The bridge collapse served as a stark reminder that infrastructure is not merely about concrete and steel, it is about people, their livelihoods, their communities, and their quality of life. It highlighted the importance of investing in infrastructure that is not only functional and efficient, but also equitable and accessible to all, regardless of income or zip code. A nation at a crossroads. The infrastructure debate reignited. The collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge reverberated through the halls of power in Washington, D.C., reigniting a long-simmering debate about the state of America's infrastructure and the urgent need for investment and renewal. The bridge, it seemed, had become a tragic metaphor for a nation grappling with aging roads, bridges, ports, and transit systems, a nation struggling to maintain the very infrastructure that had once been the envy of the world. Lawmakers, long accustomed to partisan gridlock on infrastructure spending, found themselves facing renewed pressure to act. The images of the collapsed bridge, broadcast on news channels and splashed across social media, served as a stark visual reminder of the consequences of inaction. The bridge's collapse, it seemed, had pierced the political bubble, forcing politicians to confront the real-world impact of their decisions, or lack thereof. The debate over infrastructure investment, however, extended beyond the halls of Congress, spilling into living rooms and coffee shops, town hall meetings, and online forums. Americans, confronted with the tangible evidence of crumbling infrastructure in their own communities, began to demand action, urging their elected officials to prioritize investments in roads, bridges, public transit, and other essential infrastructure. The bridge collapse, it seemed, had touched a nerve, exposing a deep-seated anxiety about the nation's future and its ability to maintain its global standing in an increasingly competitive world. It had forced a national reckoning with the true cost of neglecting the very foundations upon which a nation's prosperity, security, and quality of life depend. From disaster to renewal, charting a path forward. The collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge, while a tragedy, also presented an opportunity for renewal, a chance to learn from the mistakes of the past and chart a new course for America's infrastructure future. The disaster served as a stark reminder that infrastructure is not merely about concrete and steel, but about people, their communities, and their aspirations for a better future. In the aftermath of the collapse, policymakers, engineers, and community leaders faced the daunting task of not only rebuilding the bridge, but also reimagining the city's transportation network. The disaster had exposed vulnerabilities, but it had also highlighted the need for resilience, innovation, and a commitment to creating infrastructure that is not only functional, but also equitable, sustainable, and responsive to the needs of a changing world. The rebuilding effort, it was hoped, would go beyond simply replicating the past. It would involve exploring new materials and construction techniques, incorporating smart technologies to improve safety and efficiency, and prioritizing sustainable design principles to minimize the environmental impact. The new bridge, it was envisioned, would be more than just a replacement. It would be a symbol of Baltimore's resilience, its commitment to innovation, and its determination to build a brighter future. The collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge, while a tragedy, also served as a catalyst for change, a moment of national introspection that forced a reckoning with the true cost of neglecting the very foundations of a nation's prosperity. It presented an opportunity to move beyond the blame game, to embrace a spirit of collaboration and innovation, and to chart a new course for America's infrastructure future, one that prioritizes resilience, equity, and sustainability. The events of this past week, the devastating earthquake in Taiwan and the bridge collapse in Baltimore, stand as stark and sobering reminders of the fragility of the systems we rely upon, the interconnectedness of our globalized world, and the high cost of neglecting the very foundations upon which our societies are built. These seemingly disparate events, separated by thousands of miles and vastly different in nature, share a common thread: the critical importance of investing in resilient infrastructure, both physical and technological, to mitigate the impact of unexpected shocks and ensure the continued functioning of our increasingly complex and interconnected world. The Taiwan earthquake, a tragic reminder of the immense power of nature, exposed the vulnerability of even the most technologically advanced nations to seismic events. The disaster highlighted the importance of robust building codes, early warning systems, and disaster preparedness measures, not just in Taiwan, but in all seismically active regions around the globe. It underscored the need for ongoing investment in research and development to better understand and mitigate the risks posed by earthquakes, as well as the importance of international cooperation in sharing knowledge, resources, and best practices. The Baltimore bridge collapse, while seemingly less dramatic in scale than the Taiwan earthquake, exposed a different kind of vulnerability, one rooted in the aging infrastructure that underpins much of the developed world. The bridge, once a symbol of American industrial might, became a stark reminder of the consequences of deferred maintenance, inadequate investment, and a growing backlog of infrastructure needs. The disaster highlighted the importance of regular inspections, timely repairs, and a long-term vision for infrastructure renewal, not just in the United States but in countries around the world facing similar challenges. These events, taken together, serve as a global wake-up call, urging us to move beyond complacency and short-term thinking and embrace a more proactive and sustainable approach to infrastructure development and maintenance. The cost of inaction, as these disasters have shown, is simply too high. The Taiwan earthquake and the Baltimore bridge collapse also highlighted the interconnectedness of our globalized world, demonstrating how events in one corner of the globe can have ripple effects that are felt far and wide. The earthquake, by disrupting Taiwan's semiconductor industry, sent shockwaves through global supply chains, impacting the production of everything from smartphones and computers to cars and medical equipment. The bridge collapse, by disrupting the flow of goods through the port of Baltimore, created logistical headaches for businesses and consumers across the United States and beyond. These events underscored the delicate balance upon which our globalized economy rests, a balance maintained by a complex web of transportation networks, communication systems, and just-in-time delivery systems. While globalization has brought many benefits, including lower prices, increased choice, and greater economic integration, it has also created new vulnerabilities, making us more susceptible to disruptions in distant locations. The challenge we face is to harness the benefits of globalization while mitigating its risks. This requires a shift in mindset, away from a narrow focus on short-term efficiency, and towards a more holistic approach that values resilience, redundancy, and diversification. It requires greater cooperation among nations to share information, coordinate responses, and build more robust and adaptable systems. The events of this past week should serve as a catalyst for a broader conversation about the future of globalization, one that acknowledges both its promise and its perils. We must find ways to build more resilient and sustainable systems that can withstand the inevitable shocks and disruptions of an increasingly interconnected world. Building a more resilient future will require a sustained and coordinated effort from governments, businesses, and individuals alike. Governments at all levels must prioritize infrastructure investment, recognizing that it is not merely a cost, but an investment in future prosperity, security, and quality of life. This includes not only funding for new construction, but also for the maintenance and upgrading of existing infrastructure, often neglected but equally critical. Businesses too have a crucial role to play. They must move away from a narrow focus on short-term profits and embrace a longer-term perspective that values resilience and sustainability. This includes diversifying supply chains, building in redundancies, and investing in technologies that can enhance efficiency and reduce risk. Individuals, while seemingly less influential, can also contribute to building a more resilient future through their choices as consumers, investors, and citizens. By supporting businesses that prioritize sustainability and ethical sourcing practices, by demanding greater transparency and accountability from corporations, and by advocating for policies that promote infrastructure investment and environmental responsibility, individuals can help to create a more resilient and sustainable future. Building resilience is not a one-time effort, but an ongoing process. It requires a shift in mindset, away from a reactive approach that addresses problems only after they occur, and towards a proactive approach that anticipates challenges and invests in solutions before disaster strikes. The Taiwan earthquake and the Baltimore bridge collapse, while tragic events, can also be seen as opportunities for learning and growth. By carefully studying the causes and consequences of these disasters, by identifying vulnerabilities and lessons learned, we can emerge from the rubble with a renewed determination to build a more resilient future. One key lesson is the importance of investing in infrastructure that is designed to withstand multiple hazards. This means building structures that can withstand not only the most likely threats, such as earthquakes or hurricanes, but also less frequent but potentially more catastrophic events, such as floods, wildfires, or pandemics. It means designing infrastructure with flexibility and adaptability in mind, so that it can be easily modified or repurposed as needs change. Another important lesson is the need for greater redundancy and diversification in critical systems. This means moving away from a reliance on single points of failure, such as a single bridge or a single supplier of a critical component. It means building in backup systems, alternative routes, and multiple sources of supply to ensure that essential services can be maintained even in the event of a disruption. The events of this past week have tested our resilience, but they have also revealed our capacity for compassion, innovation, and cooperation. By heeding the lessons of these disasters, by investing in more resilient infrastructure, by strengthening global cooperation, and by embracing a more sustainable path forward, we can create a future where tragedies like these, while never forgotten, become less likely to occur.